Okay, hello my friends. Welcome to week 9 of Career Lab. We've been going on this journey, speaking to different artists, speaking to students, thinking about what we talked about last week in terms of saving and investing our efforts now for when we are older. This week I want to switch gears and get back to just really straightforward, practical career advice. And we've talked a lot about freelancing and pricing your work, but now I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about getting those studio jobs. So that's what we're going to focus on today. So today's presentation is titled The 7 Rules for Landing a Studio Gig. And I want to talk to you about a little bit of how you can go about this. Now, a lot of this is anecdotal to me, to my experiences to working in different studio environments, different agency environments, but also just having interviewed probably hundreds of different artists at this point with my role here at MoGraph Mentor. There's just so many different common things that seem to come up. So if you're looking for your studio dream job, I'm here to tell you the 7 rules for how to do just that. Now, as I said, this is based on my own experience, so it's somewhat anecdotal as a freelancer, and I've been a full-time employee at different times. I've interviewed at least 100 artists who have their dream jobs, and I'm amazed at the commonality of how they landed these jobs and what aspects made the difference. Why did they get the job? So rule number 1, and the most obvious, the artist's work must be good, okay? The best restaurants in the world hire the best chefs, and the best studios hire the most competent, passionate, and talented artists. There's just no way around it. If your souffle is no good as a chef, you're not getting the job. If your portfolio is no good as a motion designer, you're not getting the job. It's just as simple as that. So let's be very clear. What is not good and what is good. We have an image from Buck on the right. On the left, we have some clip art. Now, the one on the left, it's not even that it's bad. I mean, it's clearly communicating the idea of the cow and the guy, and he's milking it. But you wouldn't say it's good. You wouldn't look at it and say, oh, that's good. That's really appealing. That's really interesting. That has a lot of variety. So I mean to say that you shouldn't have just an average portfolio, but a good portfolio. It's not enough to not just make bad work, you have to make actively good work. That's rule number 1. Rule number 2, the artist must be easy to work with. And I feel like this image says it all. Do not be the monkey in the studio throwing your feces at everyone, even in a metaphorical sense. So making client work is hard enough without diva artists adding to the complication. Being easy to work with is more than just not throwing garbage around the office and cursing everyone out, although that is a bad idea. Being easy to work with means you're not going to add drama where none should exist, right? We want people who bring solutions. They don't bring problems with them into the studio. So you won't create problems for your employer and teammates, but rather actively seek to solve them. That's what I think it also means to be easy to work with, okay? So a couple of examples, right? So there was a really rough round of feedback. Well, the easy to work with person says, you know what, that's no problem. That's all part of the gig. Sometimes we get changes from clients, and that's just the nature of the business. Let's say you're not happy with your role on the team, right? You don't like where you're at in the studio, you don't love it. Well, no problem, okay, you're gonna come to your boss with transparency and authenticity and be honest, instead of holding it in and giving a half-assed effort because deep down you're not happy. Okay, so how you deal with adversity also contributes to whether or not you're easy to work with. Being easy to work with is not easy unto itself, okay? It takes a mindset that you will show up each day with a positive attitude, ready to work, an understanding of the pressures on your leadership team and your peers, okay? Everyone else is trying to do their job. Don't make their job harder. Rule number 3, the studio must know you exist. You've got to find a way to solve this problem to meet the obligation of this rule. Okay, it's going to be hard for your dream studio to hire you if they've never heard of you. It's obvious to say it, but I talk to a lot of students and I feel like it's worth establishing, okay? You need to be on their radar. That is essential if you have any hope of even being considered. Fortunately, adhering to this rule is really easier than ever, okay? Communications and correspondence has never been easier. Most studios now even have a proper channel that you can work through. Or you can use your creativity, right? A little bit of a social media splash. And some of you may be familiar with this video that B. Grandinetti did. She's a designer, animator, illustrator, and she was hoping to get an internship at Giant Ant, and she made a film called Tiny Ant. Now, her portfolio was good, so we go back to rule one. The work has to be good. That matters most. But once the work is good, how do you get on someone's radar? Well, she basically created a love letter in the form of animation to Giant Ant, and that's an amazing idea. Now, full disclosure, in that situation, she never became an intern for Giant Ant because I think there were visa issues. But even speaking to some of their team members, they were very excited about the possibility of bringing this person in who they didn't even know who she was, because she put together this video and put herself out there in a really, really interesting and creative way. So I think that was a really good idea and something for all of us to consider. If the portfolio is there, maybe a creative way to get on their radar is a good thing. Number 4, the studio must have a need. And this is a little bit about researching as well. Sometimes your dream studio just isn't hiring, okay? So it stands to reason that if you want a job there, it's important they actually need more billable hours in their shop, okay? So research these studios, search their job listings, send an introductory email with your portfolio and find out what's going on with their business. If they aren't hiring right now, don't panic, and certainly don't burn any bridges. When they have a need, you'll want to be someone who they have good feelings about. Number 5, the artist must be realistic about money and work. Okay, supply and demand is a hell of a thing. I know, it's not the greatest. We'd all like to make, and I put $500,000 a year being a Netflix critic, and that's the image I put here on the screen. Sadly, that is not likely, although I would love to make a living watching West Wing reruns over and over and giving my feedback. Probably not going to happen. Now, many artists would love to make 6 figures. They'd love to make $100K a year as a motion designer, but a lot of studios and markets, more specifically, simply can't afford that. They simply cannot bear that cost. So we have to be realistic. So, for example, living in Kansas City means maybe you're going to make somewhere on the order of 35 to 70K, depending on your experience and portfolio, for a full-time position that demands 40 hours a week. And then maybe living in San Francisco, for example, and getting a job at a large tech company like an Airbnb or a Google or an Apple on one of their internal design teams, you might make 80 to 160, maybe even 200, because San Francisco is ungodly expensive now for a full-time position. So you need to understand a little bit of that context, understand the market you're in, understand the types of businesses we're talking about. There was a really interesting moment recently. I was watching some stuff from Chris Do, who's a really, really great resource who I would encourage you all to check out in terms of growing your career and freelancing and all this, where he's talking about a lot of large tech firms pay their interns more than he can afford to pay his senior artists at his studio, which is called Blind, which is a very successful studio. Because Google and Apple, these are Fortune 50 companies, $200,000 to them is nothing, whereas a smaller studio, maybe the owner of the studio is making $200K or somewhere around there. So you've got to be realistic not only about the market you're in, but also the types of businesses that you want to work at and what their actual capacity is to pay people, because it can vary widely. Number 6, the artist has a growth mindset. Okay, this rule doesn't always take effect at the start of the relationship, but it inevitably comes true given time. Okay, artists may be able to fake out their employer for a bit, but eventually this reveals itself. If you want to keep your dream studio gig or get it in the first place, I would recommend having a growth mindset, which basically means you understand that you will and must learn new things in your role over time. You're going to have to get better. Whatever skills you walk in the door with, if you're not better a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, you've got a big problem. And finally, number 7, the artist doesn't feel entitled to the job, okay? You don't grab the money with one hand and stick the other hand out and say, what else do you have for me, okay? This is a subtle rule, but I really do stand by its accuracy, okay? Entitlement oozes off of people, and it's not terribly hard to spot as a creative director or CEO looking to make a hire. It is most obvious not for what entitlement displays, but for what it doesn't display, for what it lacks, which is gratefulness, okay? A grateful soul, a grateful person is immediately comforting to those around. You want to be around people who have a grateful disposition and not an entitled disposition. Okay, a grateful attitude makes it clear to your potential employer that you won't show up on day one with a long list of expectations, adding more pressure and stress to the team environment. The entitled artist will work slowly, spend too much time on Facebook, display their sense of overimportance in a million little ways, and it just does not wear well on people. On the other side, the grateful artist is going to work quickly and efficiently because, first of all, they understand they're replaceable. Entitled people tend not to understand that as much. They make sure that their office hours are devoted to actual office work, not social media. I can't tell you how soul-crushing it is to hire someone, to bring someone into your studio, to pay them an hourly rate, a high hourly rate, and then walk by the desk and see them on Facebook for 15 minutes. That's a bit soul-crushing for the person who then has to write that check and say, look, I get it, you're not going to work constantly, but please, when you're on the clock, when you're doing billable hours, make progress, okay? Because studios hire people because they have a lot of work and they actually need to get through it. So while the entitled artist might mope, the grateful artist brings energy and positivity to the team. The entitled artist complains, while the grateful artist brings positivity to those around them. The entitled artist waits for their boss to thank them, while the grateful artist reaches out with, I'm grateful for this opportunity to work and show you what I can do. And I can't tell you how, some of this is anecdotal. I have worked with a lot of subcontractors, okay? And the people who are grateful for their position, who come in, they work hard, they empathize with your position. If I'm trying to turn a video around, they empathize with the fact that the client has expectations of me. So if this subcontractor says, by Thursday night, I'm going to have these frames all put together in a PDF and uploaded to the Dropbox, if they're a grateful artist, they will usually have the empathy to say, I really better get this done. I really better deliver because they have expectations of him. So just trying to understand the position of your employer makes you a really, really valuable asset. So my key message, my key summary about all of this is to say that landing your dream studio gig is, of course, a series of factors. We talk, first and foremost, the work must be high quality and in line with the work of that studio. The studio must have a need, and you must work to get on their radar if they don't already know about you. After the quality of work is established, which has to come first and foremost, establish the quality of your abilities. After that, it depends a lot on your emotional intelligence, right? Your people skills are going to matter a lot in this process of landing a full-time job. So be conscious of that. Do your best to exhibit a positive and grateful spirit to let your future employer know that you are not there to add to their problems, but to help solve them. I don't see how people who have strong technical ability, strong artistic ability, a positive attitude, they're easy to work with, they understand the business, those people are gems, okay? Those people are diamonds, and those are the people that employers are desperate to find and then desperate to hold on to, okay? Once you get that studio gig, if you're there, you're working hard, you understand the business, you're there to seriously solve problems, not add to problems, now you're in a position to leverage higher wages over time because they want to keep you, because that can actually be rare in certain scenarios. So that is my encouragement for all of you today. If you're thinking about landing a studio gig, you've got your eye on certain studios, you want to be in that full-time position, freelancing is not for you. Well, first and foremost, think about the portfolio. And then once you can do that, there's the sort of logistical challenge of getting your name, getting your portfolio in front of the right people. And then that third tier after that is the emotional intelligence, the people skills, making it very clear you understand the nature of the business, you're there to work hard, and you're not there to mess around. Those 7 rules, it's going to be very hard for you to fail if you can do all those things, because it's not totally automatic or totally easy to do all of those things. So that is my encouragement for all of you here on episode 9 of Career Lab. And I hope that whatever you're going after, if it's freelance or studio time, because a lot of these things can be applied to your freelance career as well, or your freelance business, that you're making an honest effort. You have also the ability to have some self-awareness, right? That you can audit your portfolio appropriately, that you're being realistic. So if you want a job at Buck, but your portfolio is It looks like the clip art that we showed. If I go to Buck and I show them this image on the left, I'm not getting the job, okay? And if I didn't know that in the first place, well, now I've just made a terrible first impression. So part of auditing yourself and auditing your portfolio and being very realistic and also having appropriate taste to know that your work is either on par or not on par, and so now you need to do something about that. You've got to have that level of self-awareness to be able to just know it in a second, know it in an instant, know it in a snapshot of looking at your portfolio and then looking at the work of these studios. And if you do have certain types of studios in mind, and here you are in MoGraph Mentor and you're kind of working through your projects, keep that in the back of your mind of what type of work is going to line up with the types of studios that I want to work with. So that's something also to consider. And I don't want to unnecessarily beat up on this clip art image because it's not bad, it's just not good. So that is it for episode 9 of Career Lab. Thank you for listening, thank you for watching, and we will see you again next time.